So it's like 30-minute conversation with Stephen King talking to this writer on the phone who he has some sort of relationship with about all things Pet Sematary. And so I just took some notes here that I thought maybe I could rattle off from that.
Sure.
I think you would find of interest. All of these things are excited me enough to make note of in this way.
Well, I read the actual in an article. I read the interview, and it was a great interview. So this is totally right up my alley.
I think all of this is a little bit extra, which you could hear Stephen King say. The article, at least as it appeared in the magazine, it wasn't very long, but it touched on a bunch of things and made me excited. That was the one where he says he thought the movie was fucking great, like, quote, fucking great. Yeah. And so we were excited because of that.
My only caveat to that is I saw somebody on Reddit, and this was a great comment, is Stephen King has a really good track record of liking crap. Like he has a soft spot for crap and schlock. He'll admit that, But I think there's a difference between like quality schlock and this, like what this was.
I think too that he has this conflicted relationship with Pet Sematary, the book. Like how he wrote it and put it in a drawer and had this bad opinion of it and only even brought it out of the drawer to fulfill this publishing contract that he wanted to get out of. And I don't necessarily think he has a good grasp on what it is about it that is so compelling to other people. I don't know. It's like, part of me wonders, like, does he, I don't know. Cause it's not like he said he liked the Dark Tower movie or anything. Like, I don't think he says he likes things that he doesn't. I'm not sure why he would lead us astray.
Well,
as it were.
but also he is a great businessman, and I don't think he's going to. I don't know.
I'm wondering about that too.
I don't know if he would just shit all over his property.
Yeah.
So there's that interest part that you have to keep in mind too. Like,
yeah.
I was thinking about this the other day, like that, that saying, like, you should never meet your heroes. And it's like,
oh yeah. Yeah.
I don't think I would ever I mean, of course, if the opportunity came, I probably would, but I would be really worried it would be like that. Like if I ever met Stephen King, like it would.
Yeah. It's weird. Like I have no idea what I would want to, what to say to those people. I mean, so much, and nothing could live up to certain things, and the few people that I have encountered that I admire in that way, they're being able to humanize them in some way, like it does kind of color I don't know, that's a thing that can be fucked up, or that can be diminished by familiarity breeds contempt, right?
So. So I don't know, there's that piece of it too, because it's like he said the Dark Tower movie was good.
He did?
Yeah.
No, he did not. Oh, that's well. Then
and it wasn't.
I didn't see that,
it wasn't until the all the fallout from it, and then somebody brought it up in an interview, and he's like, "Yeah, they kind of missed the mark, I guess." Like, I mean, he has a vested interest in these movies doing good, right? Like,
that's true. I didn't know he said that.
Yeah.
I thought he ignored that movie, and I didn't see it. I haven't read those books, but I just had a general sense from your incredible disappointment from it. And
yeah.
In some ways, I'm glad I didn't know that going into the Pet Sematary movie, but now that statement alone tells me a lot. Well, okay, so these are, again, this is like about Pet Sematary in general. So and these are things I thought might be of interest to you and I. No,
I don't mean to keep interrupting. So
we'd have no show if that was.
That's true. Yeah.
Did things. So this is really kind of just no real rhyme or reason other than these are things I found interesting that he said. So one is, King says, quote, "Sometimes dead is better," extends to anybody who's ever had to deal with a lingering illness or a relative who won't let go. Sometimes the desire to live is just a biological thing, which is something I had not considered about the novel. That idea that sometimes dead is better extends to like what Rachel experienced with her sister Zelda, who kind of deteriorated into this sort of monster. I hadn't thought about it like that. It's generally applied to the pet
Yes.
in the movie,
Yeah.
and the humans who get brought back, I guess.
Right. Well, the dead is better thing doesn't actually, you don't learn that until after they come back from the dead, right? In
Right,
Pet Cemetery.
Yeah.
It's really because of that such glaring literal translation of that line. I mean, you saying like that's what Zelda was going, like that was an epiphany. That was new to me. Like
Yeah, me too. I
like
never considered that. And to
yeah.
hear it from him was,
Yeah.
and to know he intended that,
Yeah.
was very interesting to me. And I watched. There's a wonderful, like they're 30-minute chunks, but in the 2006 DVD release of Pet Sematary, which as this comes out or as we're recording this, like you can get for $5 at Target. There's like a whole display based on Pet Sematary of Stephen King movies. Pet Sematary 89 being one of them. There's a documentary chunks on that. It's not one long documentary, but it could be played as such. 30-minute focusing on certain things, but like Stephen King walks you through the actual Pet Sematary. It's really great. Actually, after I was thinking about this new movie, I really wanted to contrast it with the 1989 film, but
I wanted to do the same thing. That's so
instead
crazy.
of doing that, I made some notes, but oddly enough, instead of watching it, I watched the making of things on that DVD from 2006. And then, of course, there's the Unearthed and Untold documentary about the making of the 1989 film that you can watch on Amazon Prime. There's a lot of things.
Yeah.
Stephen King
and
has
that
written.
documentary is great too. It's like, it's a great filmmaking documentary. It's a great like Stephen King documentary.
And it really focuses on that 1989 film as well. There's a lot known about this story and documented about this story, but I had never heard that little tidbit of him extending that metaphor of sometimes dead is better to people
who were still alive. And I guess in an extension too is the old man's wife in the book. You know, she's like suffering from arthritis and just like her life is deteriorating throughout that beginning part of the book. And so maybe dead is better applies to her too. Yeah. And whenever I would hear that line, I would only apply it to the people and pets coming back, like the Pet Cemetery thing, not the Jesus. Wow.
And then I wonder about, like, I don't know a lot about how Stephen King's mom died, but I know he was raised by her, and I know there's that woman in the room thing, and so I wonder about some of that.
Yeah.
Because some of the most powerful things about the book is that idea of like how somebody who has that kind of debilitating illness can lose themselves and like just lash out in these evil ways, and the way that then Lewis as the doctor tries to normalize that for his wife Rachel, who's been tortured by it her whole life and consumed with guilt and can't deal with death. Like that, honestly, the bad movie or the Hollow movie adaptation that we're working towards really made me appreciate both the 1989 film that was adapted by Stephen King, but all the more so the book. It's such a like the supernatural parts of that don't happen until at least halfway through or something like that. Like it develops the characters in the themes so much.
That's the whole my complaint of this movie is that, and this would go out to anybody who's adapting Stephen King. The reason Stephen King is so scary is because he doesn't care. If it takes 500 pages, he'll spend 500 pages just talking about character development and getting you to care about his people. You're so invested in his characters by the time this shit starts happening to them that you stand next to them and get just as scared at these things. I mean, at the end of the day, it's zombies. If you really wanted to come down to it, like they're making zombies, right? Like how ubiquitous right now are zombies, how they're not scary. They're not really, and I think that it comes through when they don't do that character development in this movie. There's nothing, it's just, again, it's just all spectacle because they didn't spend any time getting you to care. Like I thought it was a waste of John Lithgow's abilities as an actor that he, oh shit, I'm going to call him Herman Munster. And I know that's not.
Fred Gwynn. Yeah.
Fred Gwynn though is that character. Like
yeah.
And he feels like that character is so, I almost said innocent, but he's not, because he's the one that like turns Creed on to the Pet Sematary, right? And like how to do all that.
Mm-hmm.
And he knows what he's doing when he does it. And but Fred Gwynn is so, he just embodies that. And I felt like there was a couple times with John Lithgow, because they didn't do that same character development. His character kind of came off as like a dirty old man as opposed to like being this grandfatherly figure.
Right.
You know, like,
yeah.
And that was, and I'm not implying any of that. There was just a couple times because they didn't develop that whole side of the story.
No, that's such a moving thing about the book, is that they spent a lot of time developing Lewis's friendship with I'm blanking on his name.
Creed. Is it Creed? Is he Creed?
Lewis Creed is the main sort of character, doctor. What the fuck is the name of the...
Hang on.
Oh my God. I can't believe it. It's completely escaped me.
It is...
Thank you. It's not coming to me.
Judd Crandall.
Judd Crandall. Oh my God. Judd Crandall. Like Lewis goes across like he has beers most nights with Judd on his porch with Judd. I feel like his wife's name might be Norma. Like you get to know them. Like there's no wife in either of the films. He's a widower both times, I think. But that's another death that like that's actually what the first death that touches the family, like that the kids that are exposed to. Oh man, but they do such a good job of their, and I have like one of perhaps my only honest to goodness friend in Minnesota is 40 years older than me. He's I'm about to turn 40, he's about to turn 80.
Wow.
And so I related to that extra because I have this sort of Tuesdays with Maury or whatever it is, like relationship with this older guy. But I mean, in terms of caring about, you care about all of the characters, but probably the relationship that is developed the most is the one between Judd and Lewis. And in the new adaptation, they don't develop that at all. Like they don't have one beer together.
It's like they looked at the book and they're like, what are all the people? What's all the people part of this book? All right, get rid of that shit. Like they kill off Judd's wife. She's not even a character. Mm-hmm. They don't do any of that beer stuff. They cut out all of the tension with the like father-in-law and the like from Chicago and how he hated him for bringing them out to Maine. And he like that's a big part of the book is like that fight that happens between the like father-in-law and Creed at the son's funeral. Like they get in a fist fight over the casket,
and the casket gets knocked over and like
falls out of it because the father-in-law blames him for this. Like if he would have never moved them to that thing. And then in the book you get all that prior exposition, like where he literally tried to buy Judd Lewis
he
Creed,
tried to buy Lewis
Creed out of his life, like out of his daughter's life. Like, how much do you still owe on your medical school? I'll pay for all that if you just disappear.
Yep.
And he
long before they even moved too, right?
Long before, and
he just hated him.
Yeah, and he never told his wife that, and like so you have that piece that he carries with it, and then, and in this movie, all you get is one stern look at the funeral.
Right. That's all.
That's it. And like there are pages devoted to that. The Zelda,
that's part of the strain in their family. It's
the Zelda stuff. I saw no need to change. Why? It was so much. So in this one, they gave her like an out, like it was an accident, that she fell down this dumbwaiter, right?
Oh, I forgot about that. I knew there was a falling down the dumbwaiter, but Yeah.
But like it was in the book and the original movie, she chooses not to go into that room and listens to her sister die. Like listens to her choke to death and die.
Yeah.
That's why, and this is the other thing too about this, that there's a difference between a haunting and being haunted. The wife is haunted by Zelda. And in this adaptation, they made it like the land re-brought Zelda, those memories of Zelda about, and made her this physical manifestation that was actually like, she couldn't wait for her to cross over so that she could torture her. Like that's what it was implying. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like,
like the Wendigo was somehow responsible for the Zelda stuff, which the two are completely mutually exclusive.
So exclusive. Like, and Zelda was not haunting her. She was haunted by the memory. Like that's
why she can't deal with death.
Yeah.
Which is a big rift in her life and in her marriage. And then of course the whole book ends up being about death. There are some things like that the movie, like the scene in which he breaks down death to the little girl a little bit, felt kind of good. I don't know. Let me hit some of these other notes.
Yeah,
some
I'm
of
so
them
sorry.
came up.
Yeah.
Oh no, not at all. But he does talk about like revisiting the book by listening to Michael C. Hall's audiobook, which I thought was really interesting that he took the time to listen to that, which you can download on us by going to
audibletrial.com/LWSD.
Pet Sematary.
Sign up for your 30-day Audible trial and download Pet Sematary read by Michael C. Hall for free. It is a great reading. Like it's such a disturbing book. It's not just one that where you're just like I'm going to listen to Pet Sematary. You know, like
yeah. You might not be up for it. Yeah. I mean, that's how I felt about Shawshank Redemption. Like when the one time I did try to watch that movie, like in probably the mid '90s, I was just like, I am not up for this.
Yeah,
and then I took like 25 years to watch it.
It goes from him like being accused of murdering his wife to getting raped. Like there's like that's the first act of that movie is like.
I think the first thing I remember about the movie when I tried to watch it on TV was just like showing him in his jail cell and hearing men cry around him or like betting that he would break.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I'm a break. I can't watch this right now.
Yeah,
so,
no, I get it.
But so when you're ready for it, it is a really good audiobook. But I thought it was interesting that Stephen King took the time to listen to it. He dishes a bit on some of the specifics of his Doubleday beef, which was the contract that he was trying to fulfill to get out of. So that was kind of interesting for Stephen King fans that I didn't make note of the details, but you can hear them in this interview. There's a note here about the Judd and Lewis relationship where Stephen King simply says men need men and women need women. And I think that goes to the friendship that was developed between the two of them. In the book, like at first, Lewis doesn't really want to be friends with this guy, or he's just like, as a doctor, he worries that maybe they'll just use him to get free doctor advice.
Yep.
But so it's like the fact that the friendship is begrudging, like there's even a point too where like he realizes it. He's like, oh, I'm friends with this guy. Like it's a really like slow progression of their relationship, and it kind of dawns on him. Anyway, it's very well done, very impactful in the book. Stephen King says he had to get in the book. Oh, he had to get this idea in the book of you do things and you think they're good things. This is a quote. You do things and you think they're good things, but sometimes something gets a hold of you. And then he mentions a character in The Green Mile, which I don't know that yet. And he says he killed them with his love. He's talking about Judd ultimately. So like this idea like that Judd was this benevolent figure in their lives, but something about the Pet Sematary or the Wendigo or the burial ground, like once he knew it existed, it preyed on him. And even though he introduced it to the Creed family, knowing probably it was a bad thing, like he couldn't quite help himself. That's like in the book. And anyway, it came from this idea, I guess, that Stephen King wanted to get in there. There was an idea he had about just life in general, that he put through that character, which I thought was kind of interesting. You had mentioned zombies, which has some bearing on this. they asked him why he wrote why Stephen King wrote the adaptation of the 1989 film. And he said he did it at the time because George Romero was going to direct it.
Awesome. Yeah.
He said, and he goes, I wanted the screen credit, man. If somebody was going to fuck this up, I wanted it to be me.
Yeah.
And from IMDb, it was the first film screenplay that Stephen King adapted from one of his own novels. So it doesn't count Creepshow.
Or Trucks.
Oh,
because did he direct that?
Yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah.
But that was a short story.
It was
novella.
Because of yeah. Good point though. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I just think that shit. I thought it was interesting in the Unburied and Uncut or whatever Unearthed and Untold or whatever the making of documentary. She talks about that because it's very early in that documentary, but she says that it was in the contract that he got to pick the director. Like
Mary Lambert, the director of that.
Yeah,
movie?
she talks about how like Stephen King had to give the final okay on who was going to be the director, which, I mean, even then shows how much clout this guy had. 1989, that's essentially he had only been publishing novels for what, like a decade at that point.
Yeah, I just looked up Carrie. The movie of Carrie came out in 1976.
Oh, okay.
So he'd been at it for a little over a decade, and very successful. I mean, Carrie was very successful, but yeah, like he had some clout. Certainly.
That's like J.K. Rowling level of command with your property, with your intellectual properties, right? Like that's normally that shit. I have heard if you publish a book now, that shit is all, before they even offer you publishing, that shit is already taken off the table for you. Like you don't get a say in how stuff gets adapted into film. Like they've already bargained off the rights to that if you decide to publish it, so that I don't know, it's just very telling how much clout it seems like he had in this production, on top of it just being to get out of a contract, that he still negotiated all that stuff in there just so he could get out of a contract. So
because the book ended up being this big success, despite what he might have thought. Some other things about Judd. So there's also a 20-minute interview with John Lithgow from the set that comes after the 30-minute interview with Stephen King in this thing. And he said that he never saw the 1989 film, but he was good friends with Fred Gwynne, and he said he was the only person he ever acted with that was taller than him. And then Lithgow says this about he says, so he's on set when he's giving this interview. He says, quote, when you really care about these characters and what motivates them, that the stakes go way, way up.
Oh.
Which of course, the tricky thing about this thing, I feel too, in Pet Sematary being in existence for as long as it has, I think what it seemed to me what they did with this movie was they just took a lot of the events, a lot of the tantalizing supernatural events, and put them in succession and made some deviations from the what we know, like the 1989 film that's so well known and the novel that's so well known. And so it seemed a lot about how are they going to adapt this slightly differently, but part of that seemed to presume a familiarity with the story itself, so that they didn't take the time and care to invest that story.
And then but drastically derailed from it though,
that too. Yeah.
It was never a motivation for Gage to get the rest of them buried. That was always people were making that terrible decision. And then they made, so, for those of you that don't know, the major deviation was they, instead of killing the 3-year-old boy, they killed the 8-ish year old girl, the older sister.
Yeah.
because they said that a young daughter is much more menacing than a 3-year-old toddler, which I'm sorry, that the original Pet Sematary still fucking scares me. I don't care. I don't care what you say. Like,
yeah, and I didn't find her to be more
no,
like threatening or more effective.
well, and again, at least I cared about that little kid.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. Like I just didn't feel anything, and then I didn't like they tried after she was dead and back to do the kid asking questions about death stuff. Like, no, like,
oh, right. Yeah.
you don't like me because I'm dead, mommy. Like, that's what? Of course that's why she doesn't like you. Like,
well, and they didn't fucking lay the groundwork
why are you
to
even
establish
talking?
why they would be different.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Yeah, like
all of it.
The Timmy Baterman stuff, like that they did in Stephen King's adaptation, where like they oh man, like obviously you see through the cat, the church that is the first thing that Lewis buries in the Pet Sematary with Judd. He's like, you love your daughter, right? You don't want her to have to lose this cat. So it comes back and it's not the same. You sense that there's a malignancy about it.
Yeah.
And then when Lewis confronts Judd about that, Judd mentions that thing about like, I don't know why I did it. Like this place kind of takes hold of you. And then he tells at some point, maybe it's when his wife passes away, when Judd's wife passes away or something. I feel like it's before the little boy is run over in the road that, or maybe it's when that, anyway, but Judd tells him about like one time there, somebody did try to bring a human back and this is how it went. And like in the movie, he tells that story and you see then just like movies are about, I mean, Judd's telling a story, but movies are about showing things like you've seen the cat be fucked up and not right.
Yep.
And something be off and a bit, aggressive about it. And then you see another instance of like what it does to a human. So when Gage comes back, you just know that like that other guy, like Timmy Baterman, who went crazy and his dad, who wanted to bring him back, ultimately had to put him down and burn him up and the house burned up and all that. You understand that. So when you see Gage, you're not wondering what Gage's motivations are. You know that like if you are brought back by that place, you're going to come back fucked up and with a bad agenda.
Yeah. And
so you don't have to explain it.
And that when Judd tells him, not Judd, Jesus, when Creed tells himself at the end, like with the mom, well, she's going to be different because she's fresher, like she, like,
yeah.
That he's just going to restart the whole cycle over again. Like, what's going to happen. And I thought, that fucking scene when they're just like walking up, they burn the house down and then like Gage
like the family is somehow reunited in death. Did not go well. Again, you didn't care.
No, and you're just like, I mean, you should be feeling something for that little boy. Like, oh, that poor little boy, they're gonna kill him too, and then make him one of them, and you don't even feel that.
No, it was a bummer.
They took out all the people part. All that exposition, that Timmy Baterman, they did have that. There was that one scene where she's doing the internet search and sees all the weird headlines. Yeah. That's that exposition. That's there.
And again, I feel like that presumes
that
the audience knows the
thing.
book.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know the book, you know the movie. There's a funny, like with the change in the ending, Stephen King says, you can take this road to Tampa or you can take that road to Tampa. You still end up in Tampa. It's the same. Like he didn't care that it was a new kid. But that's not fucking true.
Yeah, no.
And that, I mean, I don't know if that's just a thing for him to say or if he doesn't realize that or if he's just trying to sell the movie or what.
Has a vested interest in the success of this movie. And nobody's going to go see it if Stephen King's like, yeah, it's a piece of garbage. Like,
yeah, it sucks. It's funny too, because he also, in his praise for the new movie adaptation, he said, like this and other adult-oriented movies like Jordan Peele's work.
Oh,
Which I think he's talking about Get Out, because
yeah,
he probably wouldn't have seen Us yet.
sure.
But yeah.
I just was so disappointed again with a lot of these Stephen King projects, and it was just disappointed. There's,
Yeah.
you have amazing source material. Well, first off, I wanted to come into this with making the argument that it should just never have been made, because I watched every Zelda scene in this new movie, and none of them made me feel like
none of them haunted you.
yeah.
Or just those were flat out super scary.
Yeah, and just why
in the first movie, I mean,
made the Pascal stuff. I think that this movie did a great job with the Pascal stuff, though.
Yeah, it was a different take. Yeah, it wasn't quite something about the first movie.
But they went again with the shock and awe, where she's like, his brain, and I guess maybe that does happen in the book. She does say that, one of the candy stripers, but I don't know.
Yeah, it is upsetting. It's weird. Like,
some of the stuff was effective, like that Pascal stuff was effective. I like that the son could see Pascal too, but it was just so disappointing.
Yeah, it's like I felt everything was executed really well. It just didn't, like, if it just had that other stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I thought all the performances were good. I thought it was filmed really well. All of that, like, it was really well made for the script that was there, but the script that was there didn't contain
the first act.
Yeah. Yes.
It's just
that made the whole rest of it matter.
It started halfway through the second act to get right to the juicy stuff, and it's like that. You can trick an audience like that with an action film. Ash isn't here. You can trick the audience like that with the romantic comedy. But with a scary movie, not everybody is scared about the same stuff. So the way you overcome that is you work on your characters and make them care about your characters. And both of these, I felt like they couldn't get to the quote unquote scary stuff fast enough. And because of that, they weren't scary at all.
Yeah, and it's just such a shame, because in contrast, in realizing what was missing, you realize how well developed the themes of death, and sometimes dead is better, and how that happened, all this happening to that family whose matriarch went through this horrible experience with her sister as a kid, that she carried all this guilt and couldn't acknowledge death, and then she marries a doctor who is confronted by death all the time in his job, or the black and white of it, and then in this new job that he thought would be cushy and less, life and death as the streets of what was it, Chicago or something that they came from, is confronted by this death on one of his very first days, and then I don't know. It's just, the book is so rich, and this movie is not.
and it's so rich for not being 1,000 pages like sometimes Stephen King can get. Like, this is a very approachable read for sure. And it's so funny how you say, like, there is almost like a presumptive, they assume you've seen or read the original Pet Sematary, so they don't have to spend time on this. And what's so sad is, because of that, that's true. Okay. But because of that, we know how much you cut out too.
Like,
we all know what is not there, and that you're cheating us. And
that occurred to me. If we didn't know, if this were the only film version, we might not be so hard on it, because it was faithful ultimately. Yeah. For the most part, till the end, I guess. But yeah, having the other one exist and be so good, and translated by the author himself, to include a lot of those themes, and a lot of the things left out, like the 89 movie has the conflict with the parents. It has it develops Rachel's guilt over her sister's death very well. It shows
it even has the
Timmy
fucking
Baterman.
housekeeper like killing herself.
Yes,
You know?
and that's also a dead is better. Like I realize now after hearing Stephen King talk about that. And yeah, the other movie does a lot better job of getting the themes cemented and complemented in all the things that happen in the different interplay and relationships, but also helps you care about the character. You know, the first time actually the first time I heard that Stephen King was a master of getting you to care about characters before bad things happen to them was in like behind the scenes material for the movie From Dusk Till Dawn.
Oh, nice.
Where the first half is, so that movie is written by Quentin Tarantino and then directed by Robert Rodriguez, who and starring Quentin Tarantino and George Clooney. And that was amongst no, it was just after. Anyway, I was going to say it was like how Robert Rodriguez did this interesting thing of trying to skirt the sophomore slump by confusing the marketplace with doing like a TV movie, I think he did, and Four Rooms, which was like an anthology movie with different directors of different segments, so that there couldn't be
to Desperado, right?
To El Mariachi, actually,
okay.
The sort of indie movie. And Desperado, I think, came after those things. Was a sequel to kind of remake of El Mariachi in a way. But anyway, he said that at the time. That was part of his strategy. But anyway, so From Dusk Till Dawn was this Quentin Tarantino script. And the way Robert Rodriguez approached it was because it was like this family that gets wrapped up in these two like thieves, and then they end up in a vampire bar.
Yeah.
So like the first half of the movie is just kind of this thriller with the family and the criminals, and then they all are thrust into this supernatural situation halfway through. And there's also this added thing of Robert Rodriguez tried to direct the first half like Quentin Tarantino would, with long takes and really like performance driven things, and then the second half is like this crazy action movie like he would have done. But anyway, I remember him saying, like, I didn't know Stephen King's work at this time. So this is like 1995 or 6, and so maybe 7, and I was completely ignorant of it. But one of my very first exposures to Stephen King's work was the idea that he develops characters very well, and then when something bad happens to them, you care about them. And never has that been brought more sharply into focus for me now that I am a Stephen King fan, like familiar with his work, of like how that is crucial. And if you take that part of it out, then none of it means anything, and it doesn't matter, and it's forgettable. Like remember, I didn't want to watch this remake in some ways. Like I was like, I don't want it to. I mean, then I thought about like, well, I did see some of the remakes of some of the Wes Craven movies, and then I was like, well, ultimately, like they don't mess with my memory of the good movie version. They're just forgettable.
Right. And that's exactly what this is.
This. Yeah.
It was forgettable. You know, and here's the other thing too, is I'm going to continue to go see Stephen King adaptations. That's not going to this isn't going to stop me, because I'm still holding out for another one to be it, you know, to be.
That's right. Yeah.
Which was a remake of another one that some would argue didn't need to happen because the Tim Curry one existed and people really liked the Tim Curry one, you know? So all of it makes sense. Like all of it makes sense. I think that's the other frustration on why it was so bad. It's like you have a perfect story, you have a perfect script. I mean, they make the argument that's the only reason Pet Sematary, the 1989 version of Pet Sematary, got made, was because they were trying to dodge a writer's strike. And their new boss said that she had been trying to get it off the ground for over a year, and they wanted to make sure they had movies in the pipeline. So they said, we need scripts that are ready to shoot, no edits, no rewrites, because we aren't going to have writers. So just give me a script that is shootable. And he stopped and said, but if you come to me with Pet Sematary, so help me God. And she said, all I did was I looked at him and said, but that's exactly what you're asking for. It's a perfect script. It's ready to go right now. And that's how it got made. I just don't. How can you come from all of that stuff, all of that existing stuff, and screwed up so bad? I mean,
yeah, I don't know.
Like,
I can only imagine it's just because of presuming too much familiarity with the whole thing.
you want to
Or maybe, I don't know. What were you going to say?
You want to change it up? Like, just make the first 20 minutes Zelda's death. You want to change it up?
Ooh.
And then the wife wakes up from that nightmare on the way to their new house in the car, just like this one started.
Yeah. Tell it from Rachel's story.
Yes!
Like, develop it from that end. That's great. God, you could put you in charge of things. Get your Joker movie 5 years earlier and start a DC villain universe.
Seriously,
and don't fuck up PET Sematary.
Just open right up with Zelda. It's the most terrifying thing in the whole movie.
That's a great point.
It sets the stage for Dead is Better.
Mm-hmm. It sets it in reality too.
In reality,
like the horror of an illness like that, spinal meningitis.
And then if you want to change it up, then you could spend the next 40 minutes of the movie making people think this is all going to be about Zelda. They could have done the haunting of Zelda part. They could have done that.
Yeah. They
would have opened with Zelda.
That's a really inspiring take.
I want to recut this whole movie now. I want to get it. And
this fucking new movie doesn't have the source material to support
it doesn't.
But in terms of an adaptation, that's way more fresh and effective. And from the angle than switching the kid from.
And I feel like that's what all these young directors are doing. See, the problem is the guy that did it screwed it up, where he's like, I didn't want to have, that it's an interview where he's like, I know other people read that interview. I didn't want to have to tell Stephen King why he was wrong.
Oh, right.
And the studio supported me. And I think that came off of 15 years of Stephen King's thumb being on projects, maybe, and then those projects not being successful. So they were able to make this project without his thumb under it, and then it was successful. And so then they were like, okay, well, let's just keep giving these young guys Stephen King stuff and let them do whatever they want with it. And
it's funny.
The guy,
because one of the few notes I had here that I didn't get to was they asked Stephen King like why he thought a lot of this stuff was happening, new things getting made, and he's like, probably because the financial success of it and stuff of that. But he also says he thinks his stuff gets made and remade because he's easy to work with and doesn't micromanage. Somebody said, "How about this?" And he says, I just put it in parentheses, "Sure, man, go ahead."
Yeah.
But that probably wasn't always the case,
Yeah, well, and I think that he still though has a vested interest in making sure he's very close to his stories. Maybe it's not financial. Maybe he's convincing himself just as much as anyone else. Yeah, it's good because he has to. He can't handle it being bad because he loves that story.
And I think he kind of doesn't like that story.
Well,
right?
Yeah. I'm saying in general, like.
It might be that he's amused by the tape. I don't know. It's hard to know. But I do know from some of the movies I've come across recently, like Stand By Me and Shawshank Redemption, some of his favorite things about those are the slight tweaks that the filmmaking teams took. Like to make Stand By Me directly from kind of Gordy's point of view. And I think with... I can't remember what it was necessarily about Shawshank Redemption. I guess maybe he just didn't realize how special that was as it was. But you need look no further than Maximum Overdrive to know that perhaps he's not the best one to develop these things to bring them to fruition. But at the same time, he did write the screenplay for the '89 Pet Sematary that is so successful.
And Creepshow is so awesome, and he had a huge hand in that being made. Yeah. And
he's excellent in it.
And he is excellent in it. I love that his vignette that he has in that.
Yeah, he's like they said Romero was trying to get him to be like a Looney Tunes character, and he obliged, and so he catches shit for it, but it was perfect for what they were trying for.
I just watched a David Letterman interview where he's promoting Creepshow.
Really?
It's great.
Gotta look that up
because he's like all coked up, because that's still in the like height of his drug use, and so
I'm in.
It's great. Not great. Drugs are bad.
Right.
No, yeah, I just it's just flabbergasting to me. That's how you can screw it up. And then I get so flabbergasted, I then just come back to, well, then why did it need to get made? Because I know I could turn on the original Pet Sematary right now and it would scare the fuck out of me. I could show it to new people and watch it for the first time. It would scare the fuck out of them. Like, why did it have to get made? Were they about to lose the rights to it? Like, that's why we get a new Spider-Man every 5 years.
Right,
like,
yeah.
you know, like,
I think they were just capitalizing, you know, on and making a buck. Unfortunately, that happens.
that's how you get Pet Sematary. No oversight is how you get Jar Jar Binks, and cashing in is how you get Pet Sematary, I guess.
Yeah, it's weird because a lot of things about it were really well done. It just was not and what's nuts too, I looked at the running time. Yeah, the running time was really close. It was like within a couple minutes of each other. Because I thought it was like, was the one like so much longer because it did all these other things?
You know what they added, which I did appreciate, was the swamp, like the march to the Wendigo site and like showing the Wendigo site and like implying there was a Wendigo there. The movie skirted all explicit. Over that stuff. Like that didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then we got to see it like 3 more times as people kept getting drug over there and buried. Like,
no.
And okay, so we have to use the 8-year-old because it makes more sense that she would be physically intimidating versus a 3-year-old. Okay, but explain to me how a 60-pound 8-year-old girl is going to drag a 140-pound woman over a deadfall, that huge, massive deadfall into that land to bear through the desert, all within the amount of time that the dad is pursuing them. He's on his way to them while that's all going down, right?
Yeah. Yeah, if I remember correctly. I think I was checked out by that point. I was just like, I don't even care what's going on.
And then so then he's fighting the 8-year-old daughter, and there's been enough time that the mom is back and she kills him. Then they drag both. It takes both of them though to get the dad over there. Fuck, it's so convoluted. It's so convoluted.
Yeah.
And it's like, why did you have to make that fucked up? That ending, the original ending that's both in the book and in the movie, is beautiful. With the wife coming in and he's so desperate to fix something at that point, which as a doctor, he would like a doctor who discovered the cure to death, right? Like he's desperate.
That's right. I never thought about it like that, but you're exactly right.
Desperate for this to work, right?
He did. He discovered the cure to death.
And she walks in and is like, "Oh, darling," like she's like she's been a pissy wife the whole story up to this point, right? Like, and she's like,
except for in the book where she gives him that endless hand.
Oh yeah, that's true. but like her, "Oh, darling," doesn't she say something like that? And like goes to kiss him.
My memory of it's a little muddled because I think I remember it as open-ended. I realized this when I revisited it. I remember it more open-ended, like it is in the book, where he's like playing solitaire or something, and then I can't remember exactly what it is, but I know
the movie they're
the bride
kissing and her
and then she like
up
stabs
the kitchen knife.
Yeah,
you don't
so they make
see
it a little bit more explicit.
It freeze frames with her hand up.
Yeah, which I think was an addition. Like they had it more vague, like her coming in, but you don't knowing what happens, like probably was in the book.
Yeah.
But then they ultimately elected to reshoot it and give you that kind of, they attributed it to kind of the 80s at the time. It's like what audiences wanted somehow. But it's fine. It has the same effect for me as the end of the book. Like it didn't feel like a departure.
So fucking goddamn. We got to make Cannibalized because
right. We got
to show them how to make a good scary movie.
Fuck yeah.
Fuck. man, it just like it's making me angry all over again.
I know,
just to,
it's been
think about
upsetting to talk about both of these movies. And
Yeah.
their lack of like heart and purpose, or at least one that can be felt from the viewer's point of view.
It frustrates me when I know what the potential was. I mean, you know what the potential was, and it frustrates me to know that I just like got suckered out of that money. That Yeah,
that too.
And that it wasn't good. It wasn't
disappointed that it wasn't satisfying. Like,
I mean, that definitely is more than that. But it's like
experience.
Yeah.
But money too, yeah. Like I mean, with Pet Sematary, definitely that was what they're after. Yeah.
I don't know. All right. Well, on that downer, I should probably go
watch the 1989 Pet Sematary if you're intrigued in the story, or if you saw the movie and somehow the new movie and were kind of into it. You might be. It definitely
you might be blown away if all you know is this new 2019 version of Pet Sematary, and you even moderately like it. Please go listen to the book, audibletrial.com/LWSD. Buy a copy of the book, watch the original movie, watch the documentary on Amazon Prime about it. There's so much more that you could be experiencing.
Main problems, they left shit out that made it matter. And that stuff exists and we know about it and you can experience it too.
Absolutely. They cut out all the good shit. That's just all the stuff that makes it so terrifying and so awful.
Yeah.
God, you didn't even care that the girl died. I felt nothing.
I didn't care about her at all.
So fucking terrible.
Terrible.